More over the last, I'd say, year and a half, I've been getting a question over and over and over again. And it's like, Hannah, I think I need a product marketer. Oh, and by the way, what is product marketing? Which I think is kind of funny. But I can understand the confusion around it, right? Product marketing is probably one of the most misunderstood things in marketing and in growth because it looks a little bit different at every single company. So most people will get online and they will Google product marketing. And the reality is that the kinds of responses you get can be a little bit ambiguous. So, for example, product marketing is the process of promoting and selling a product to an audience. It includes assessing needs, customer type, and geographic area. Does that tell you anything? No, not really. All right, what about this one? The 7 Ps of marketing. Did anybody here ever study marketing? Yeah? Do you guys remember this from like your 3rd year marketing class? Yeah? I couldn't actually rhyme off the 7 Ps without looking at that slide, probably. Also not super helpful. So this was the response I was seeing when people were trying to define product marketing. So as you dig a little bit deeper, you start to realize that nobody really tells you what the difference is between product marketing and marketing. Those two definitions didn't help. Now we're starting to understand. So I came across a definition actually that I really like that's getting to the heart of what it is. And this is from Joanna Lord. She's the CMO of a company called ClassPass. Some of you might be familiar, based out of New York. And she really defines product marketing at its core to be really understanding what it is you're building, why you're investing in it, and how it's going to benefit the user. This is a good start, but it's not quite enough yet. So what is it really? What are the things that a product marketer has to worry about? And why does this matter when you're a startup? And how do you actually start to scale it? Well, when we look at marketing in general, we always think in terms of funnels, right? So marketers like to think of funnels. The world is all just one big funnel. And when you look at the different aspects of your marketing and growth funnel, I think everyone's seen some iteration of this. You've got sort of the top where you're attracting people into your funnel. That's lead generation. Maybe you're doing content marketing, SEO. The gentleman that were up here earlier talked about some of the tactics that they use. Then you get them into your funnel, you're focused on converting. So maybe that's conversion optimization, landing pages. Maybe this is where your sales team starts to talk to them if you're actually working a different type of model where you have a marketing and sales engine to worry about. And then you close them, right? This is further into your model. This is maybe now they're actually talking to an account exec instead of a BDR. Maybe now they're looking at upgrading from a free trial if that happens to be your model. This last section here, guys, that is product marketing. This is where product marketing sits in an org. So product marketers need to worry about positioning. They need to worry about personas. They need to understand how to communicate your product, but it actually goes beyond that. This bottom section here actually fuels all of the other marketing stuff. So in many cases, when I talk to startups in particular, and even companies that are starting to scale, and they say, I need to hire a marketing person, who do I hire? The first thought is to hire somebody to do, I don't know, maybe content, or maybe run social. But if you're not doing product marketing, none of that stuff is going to be effective. So really understanding that that's the foundation. Now, the reality is, it sits between all of the different functions within your organization. So product marketing sits really at the intersection of product, marketing, and sales, and is probably one of the most cross-functional roles in your organization. Now, where does it cross over? Well, if we actually step back a minute and we think, what are the 4 questions that a product marketer has to answer? It really comes down to these 4 things. What are we building? That's going to overlap with product and engineering. Who are we building it for? That's going to overlap with UX, maybe product as well. How do we talk about it? It's your sales team, that's your success team, that's anybody that's talking to a customer. And how do we actually, quote unquote, go to market? Again, that's sales, that's biz dev, that's pricing, right? And great product marketers fundamentally understand the customer. And if you're early stage startup, that means customer dev. As you're actually starting to grow and scale, often we lose that connection with the customer, particularly in getting their feedback as we build products. So that is really the core of it. And bad product marketing can kill your company. So how do you know? How do you know if you have bad product marketing? Well, really it comes down to three things. People don't understand what you do and why it matters. Your employees don't know how to describe it. They don't know how to sell it. They don't know how to pitch it, right? And none of the marketing stuff you're doing is really working that well. Those are indicators that you probably need to level up from a product marketing standpoint. And those could be indicators as well, guys, that you don't actually have product market fit yet. So keeping an eye on how those are doing within your company. So what does this mean for us? How do we go from startup to scale, and how and when do we invest in product marketing? Well, I have a great little chart for you guys. If you take nothing else away from today's presentation, this is what I want you guys to take away. I also have a link there to the full article of where we pulled that from. So if you guys are really early, you're a startup, you're small, you're 5 people, you're 10 people, it might not actually make sense to hire somebody full-time for product marketing. But what you do need to start to think about is product marketing as a concept. What it comes down to is a size and complexity thing. If you're really small, but your product is super complex, you probably need to hire a product marketer because the messaging and the communications and the go-to-market around that is going to be more sophisticated. If you're really big, but your product's not that complex, you probably still need a product marketer because you need somebody to facilitate the messaging internally throughout your org if you're starting to grow and you're starting to get really big. But if you're still small, if you're still early, and if your product is still pretty simple, you need to think about product marketing as a concept. It might be something the founder does. It might be something the initial founding team does. But that's where your head should be, product marketing as a concept. And if you're really, really big and your product is really, really complex, it's a function. You're building a team. They're the heart of your organization when it comes to messaging, delivering value on your product, and keeping in touch with customers. So how do you know? How do you know it's time to hire a product marketer? So these are my oh shit moments that I try and get everybody to keep in touch with when they really want to think about whether or not they hire a product marketer. So I think a lot of us have been here before, particularly if you've worked at a startup. So you're about to launch something and you're like, oh shit, what plan should this be in? Or how much should this cost? Or how do we actually charge for this? Because we don't actually have a billing system set up. It's a no shit moment, right? When you're rewriting the email that's going out about the launch, and it actually should have gone out like 3 days ago because the product launched a week ago, right? How many people have been there before? I have definitely been there before. You were laughing at this because I feel like you just did this. Maybe. Awesome. Another oh shit moment, your sales team. They're like, oh shit, what is this product? I didn't know about it. How do I sell it? Who is this for, right? Your success team. They're like, oh shit, I didn't know we had this thing. How do I talk to customers about it? They're asking me for support on this thing that we launched that I don't really understand. That's a no shit moment. That means you need a product marketer. So what do they actually do? What is the job? What are the things that a product marketer is responsible for? So when we look at the job, I like to look at product marketing in 2 different dimensions. So number 1, there's strategic product marketing and there's tactical product marketing. There's also the ongoing stuff that a product marketer does and the time-specific, event-specific things like product launches, feature launches, big announcements. So you need to look at both lenses here, right? And you also need to understand that the person you bring on might not be able to do all of those things because it does require a different skill set. So let's dig in a little bit. Let's actually understand what this role is and how you guys can use all of the stuff that I'm going to throw out at you today and pick out what you need in order to actually nail down product marketing for your company. So when we look at the ongoing product marketing stuff, this stuff does tend to be a little bit more strategic, but this is the maintenance, right? So life is 90% maintenance, so is product marketing. This is things like market intelligence, competitive research, positioning, personas, value prop. That's stuff that is continually being iterated on. You don't just do positioning and be done with it. That's something you're continually evaluating. Messaging, creating a customer feedback loop, working with the right teams in order to do that. If you have a sales team, win-loss analysis. Does anybody know what that is? Some people? Cool. That's basically figuring out at the end of each month or each quarter, hey, we won all these customers. Why did we win them? What was the thing that actually made them convert? Hey, we lost all these customers. Why did we lose them? What was the thing that stopped them from signing up for our product? And market segmentation. And again, this is something that is continually evolving. So this is a lot of stuff. And you don't necessarily need to do all of this stuff right away, but you do need to pick out what's most impactful for your organization. Now, when we go beyond the ongoing maintenance stuff, then we're looking at product and feature launches. And this is what most people think of when they think of product marketing. And I like to look at this in 3 phases, right? There's stuff that has to happen before you launch. And before you launch, it's things like creating a spec sheet, figuring out product positioning, taking a look at market insights. I was talking to a company that launched a product, not realizing that the name they chose for their product was the exact same name as a massive competitor in the States. Oops, right? Those are the types of things you need to avoid. Creating marketing assets, creating sales collateral, making sure everybody's prepared before it launches. When it launches, it's a matter of helping the rest of the marketing team build out those campaigns. It's updating the website. It's creating a landing page if you need it. It's a press release if you need it. It's re-engaging lost deals. So remember that win-loss analysis that I told you guys about? If you know you lost deals because you didn't have this product feature thing that they really, really wanted, what an amazing opportunity for your sales team to go back and re-engage those people. But you have to be collecting the data in order to be able to do that, right? Simple things like that. And then, of course, post-launch. This is the part everybody forgets about. What are the success metrics? Who's adopted the product? What's the usage like? What's the feedback like? So having somebody that has the mandate of collecting both that quantitative and qualitative feedback on your customers is incredibly important. And that's going to go back and fuel the process so you can iterate on it later. So here's quick and dirty what the flow looks like. Now this is what I call my ugly slide because it's ugly, it's got a lot of text on it. You guys are going to have these, so I'm going to go through it really quickly. But the ugly slides tell you what to do. So that's the great thing here. It starts off with product management, right? Your product team or your engineers are building something for your customer. At some point during that build process, you need to trigger looping in that product marketing person as early as possible, ideally. Once you trigger them, they create this one-pager, this brief, this spec sheet. This is your best friend. This is going to fuel all the things. These are the things that you have to have on it. Who is it for? What's the value? Not how does it work. Your sales team doesn't really care how it works. They want to know what the value is for the customer. So understanding how to position this. Any market insights we need to be aware of. Any competitive stuff we need to be aware of. What are the links to the resources, the support documents, any content that's going out. And then from there, you need to decide, hey, what kind of launch is this? What's the go-to-market? And you also need to decide how you're going to communicate it with your internal teams. Now, depending on the size and scope of your company, this could be a very simple, lightweight process. The bigger you get, the more important it gets to manage that knowledge management. And when you look at what type of a launch this is the exact time you want to start to figure it out. Not 3 days before it launches, right? You want to figure out at least a couple weeks before it launches. And the way I like to do that is splitting it up into tiers. So at Shopify Plus, we have products getting released regularly. We have features getting released. And we need to triage what the most important stuff is. If it's a tier 1 release, this is when you're going to do all of the things, right? You're going to do a press release, a landing page, a campaign, interviews, all of the stuff. If it's a tier 2, you're going to tell customers because it's pretty cool and they should know, but maybe it's not something that you need to tell the entire world about. And if it's a tier 3, it's probably something you should have had anyway. So you just put it in the support docs, right? So understand how much time and attention and impact you should devote to these different things. Now again, guys, this is your best friend. One central place, doesn't have to be long, doesn't have to be complicated, where everybody can go and understand what's happening. And this is usually very different than a product brief, if you guys are doing product briefs. This is focused on the messaging and the value and the language that we want to put in front of customers, which is different than developer speak as we're building the product. So I have one for you. I will link to it for you. Take it, change it, make it your own, but start to think about how you use it. The questions here will start to get you guys thinking about product marketing a little bit differently. So I know what a lot of you are going to say, especially we have a lot of startups in the room. Oh my God, Hannah, that's a lot of process. It's a little bit of process, but I want to step back for a second, and I want to, I guess, talk about a little bit of a fallacy that I'm often hearing in the startup space. It's that process is bad. And the reality is, process isn't bad necessarily, because process gets you and your team into a rhythm. That's all it is, right? And having a rhythm means less stress when this kind of stuff happens. So think about what process means for you and your company. We all have processes we use. We have a process for getting out the door in the morning. So start to be intentional about how those work. And I would say that as you guys are thinking about what your product marketing process looks like, keep it as simple as possible for the size and complexity of your company. If you're a 10-person startup, it's going to look different than if you're a 200-person company, right? And understand that a good process is one that people are going to follow. So if they're not following it, rip it out. It's not working. And the reality is, you should break it when it's necessary. If it doesn't make sense anymore, kill it. If it doesn't make sense in a given scenario, don't use it. But start to think about what process means. So I kind of wanted to use the beginning of this to really define what product marketing is and what it sort of looks like. And I want to use the last half to really talk about the 3 pillars of product marketing in general. Because without these 3 things, none of the other activities matter. And that's positioning, personas, and messaging. And the first, which I think is probably the most important thing, is positioning. So here's what I will say. Positioning typically falls to the product marketer, but if you think positioning is a marketing thing, you're probably doing it wrong. This is actually one of my favorite quotes. David Packard, co-founder of Hewlett-Packard, marketing is too important to be left to the marketing department. That is entirely true. That is entirely true. When I started at Shopify Plus 3 months ago, I spent all of my time with sales, with our success team, with our ops team, with our billing team, right? Marketing is not just a marketing thing. It needs many other inputs in order to do it effectively. And positioning in particular is a company-wide thing. It needs to thread through the DNA of your entire company. So this is what most people do when they think about positioning. You go and you Google positioning, and you get this like fill in the blank positioning statement. Has everybody seen this? Where it's like you Google it, and it's like, we do this for this segment of this market better than this, and you end up with a statement that's not English. So don't do that. Please don't do that. What I would like you to do is start to think about how to frame your product in a little bit of a different way. So I have a friend. Her name is April. Some of you may know her. She talks a lot about positioning. She's actually writing a book on positioning. So I emailed April, and I was like, April, send me the best definition you have of positioning. So this is what she sent me. April Dunford, by the way. So marketing is about making it easy for people to find, evaluate, buy your product. Positioning is figuring out what your product is in the first place. Now, 2 minutes after she sent me this, she sent me another email. And she said, Hannah, hang on a second. I have a way better definition. Marketing can polish a turd. Positioning turns turds into fertilizer. So I wanted to use this because, number one, I think it is a great analogy for what product marketing is, and it's probably one of the best ones. Number two, I really wanted to use a poop emoji. I don't know. I figured it'd be fun to throw in. But this is the heart of it, right? This is taking something that's perceived in a specific way and flipping it on its head. So what does that mean? How do we actually do that? Well, Number one, it's understanding how do people think about your products. Are you turd or are you fertilizer, right? Another great example, is it a muffin or is it cake? Exact same ingredients, right? Exact same ingredients. Is it a muffin or is it cake? Context is the other important thing. So understanding the context around your product. So what do you guys think I searched when I was trying to find this image? Like sad man, something like that? Not a very talkative bunch. The last time I showed this slide, one guy said constipated. I did not search constipated, but just something got busted, his car got busted, somebody's super sad. The reality is, this dude is not sad. This is the happiest day of his life. Context is everything, particularly in product marketing. So what is the context with which people think about your product? And when you look at a product, what is the context? The context is your brand, right? The context is the language that you use. The context is your pricing, because your pricing sends a signal about where your product sits in the market. Is it premium? Is it discount? Is it consumer? What is it, right? It's your competitors. It's the channels you use. It's how your sales teams reach out, right? All of that is context around your product. And most importantly is language. The language that people use to describe your product is going to inform the positioning. And not just the language you and your employees use, but the language that your customers use as well. So prior to Shopify, I was at a company called Uberflip, based in Toronto, does marketing technology for big enterprises. So our customers were like Salesforce and Microsoft and those types of customers. And I joined really early. I joined when we were 20 people. I left when they were about 100 people. And initially, we thought we were going to be really small business. We were totally wrong. We shifted totally up market, which means an entirely new way to look at positioning and language. And we were trying to figure out, we were like, what's the thing we can say to these people so that they can understand what it is that we do and what the value is? So the founder is like, hold on a second, I got it. Like a founder bomb. Have you guys ever experienced a founder bomb like that? And he's like, we are a lightweight CMS for content marketers. Which is sort of true. That's kind of what Uberflip was, if you're familiar with it. It's content marketing software, and it's sort of, sometimes replaces a CMS and provides other functionality around lead generation. But here was a problem. Let's deconstruct that statement for a second. Keep in mind, we just shifted up market. We are now selling to enterprise. We are a lightweight CMS for content marketers. First problem, CMS. Hi, we're a lightweight CMS for content marketers. Oh, sorry, we use WordPress. Click. That's what was happening, right? Hi, we're a lightweight CMS for content marketers. Lightweight? What do B2B enterprise buyers think when they hear lightweight? They don't hear user-friendly and easy. They hear shitty. They hear not robust enough for my big, bad, enterprising needs. That's what they hear. So as much as that statement was actually kind of descriptive of the product, it wasn't the right statement for that market. So you guys need to rethink how you're talking about your product and the language that you're using. And I see this every single time. Startups using startup-friendly language to try and talk to big enterprise. Doesn't work. So this is April's handy positioning template. This will be in the slides. I will give this to you guys. This will help you figure out what your positioning is. That's all I got for this slide. Personas. Okay, every time I talk about personas, people are like, Hannah, hang on a second. You want me to create personas with cute little names like Demand Gen and Marketing Mary? Yeah, I kind of do want you to do that. And personas is probably one of the most important things, particularly early on. This is a quote I love by Brian Halligan, CEO of HubSpot, talking about when HubSpot really was able to go from startup to scale. By not deciding on one of their personas, they had paid a gigantic invisible optionality task. When they nailed down who it was that they were building product for, they were marketing to, and they were selling to, that's when HubSpot scales. You can see the graph. because the entire company was oriented around that one type of customer, and they were able to cater product, marketing, and sales to that customer. When you're early, that becomes incredibly important. So people and personas are multifaceted, and just thinking of personas isn't enough. You also need to sort of think of audience segments, right? And your product marketing function, whether it's small team doing it as just sort of a concept or a full-time hire or a full-time need, we need to broaden how we think about segmenting our audience, and there's a lot of ways to do that. So I think we all know we've got a customer base. We can look at them based on demographic data. That's easy to collect. There's lots of tools that do that. Behavioral segmentation is a little bit tougher. Are these people on Facebook? Do they like certain pages on Facebook? There's lots of tricks and tips to use to get that. You can Google it. I don't need to sit here and walk you through that. And then the other way I want you to look at is consider other types of segmentation that's not necessarily demographic and not necessarily behavior. For example, at Uberflip, we would segment people based on the technology that they use because we would integrate with different types of technology. And if they used Marketo versus HubSpot, they spoke a different language. Same type of product, same function, same value, different language, right? So start to think about how to segment your audience and start to think about how your persona fits within that audience segment. Now, when you're early on, it's probably one segment, one persona, and it should be. You should be focused, just like we talked about in Brian Halligan's example. As you start to scale and grow, bigger orgs start to think about splitting up those segments, right? And then there's this whole thing called segment marketing, which we'll address in a different topic, because I think it's a topic in and of itself. Now, if you're targeting enterprise, the thing you need to remember is that it's not always one persona, and understand the difference between the decision maker and the influencer, and also the difference between a buyer persona and a user persona. Shopify Plus is a perfect example of this. We might have 2, 3, 4 people involved in the buying process, but that's not always the same person that's using the product day to day, right? They might be an influencer, but they're not necessarily the decision maker. Identify those people and learn how to talk to them. So this is actually an example of personas we built out at Uberflip, and we really tried to dig deep into who each of these people were. And then the other thing you want to think about is you've got your personas, you've got your buyers, you've got your decision makers. Who are the roadblocks? Who are the people that actually are going to stand in front of you selling your product? In our case, it was SEO a lot of the times. They were like, oh no, SEO, how's this going to impact stuff? Developers often do that, right? So start to think about who'll help and who'll hinder the process. And start to think about where they are in the innovation cycle. Has everybody seen this before? Yeah? Cool. If you're really, really early, you're probably selling to these types of people. These people, the innovators, are different. These people self-educate. These people, they're okay with your shitty software and your bugs. They're okay with that because they're really excited about what you're doing and they're buying into your vision, right? These people are not so okay with bugs. These people need different language. They need different marketing. They need a different approach. This is the stuff that your product marketing function, concept, team, role, whatever it is, however you're integrating into your company, needs to think about. And the last part, this I think is probably one of the most important parts, is messaging. So we talked about positioning, one foundational pillar. We talked about personas, that's the second one. The third one is messaging. And I'm going to give you guys a messaging framework to help you start to think about how to do this stuff. So the way I like to think about it is really nailing down the why, right? And from the why, you're going to pull out a couple of secondary messages. So let's actually put this into practice. So Netflix might look something like this. Now, just a caveat here, I don't know if this is what Netflix does. This is me totally making it up. But hey, maybe Netflix's big value, their why, is that it's the best entertainment straight to your device. We know exactly what you're going to love before you do, which is kind of creepy when you think about it. But maybe that's the messaging they go. Their secondary messaging is, hey, it's great content, it goes straight to your device. We've got recommendations so that you're going to love the stuff that you read. It's convenient and it's cheap. But how do you go beyond that? How do you actually start to build your marketing campaign beyond that? Well, you need proof points. You need to back up all of those different statements, those secondary statements. So you've got great content, prove it. It's where the ratings come in. It goes straight to your device, prove it. That's easy, because it does. You just show them, right? Recommendations, convenience, low cost. You need to prove what you're saying from a messaging perspective. Next thing you want to layer on is what's the product story. So you're going to prove it, then you're going to tell them how the product works. Notice that comes a little bit lower, right? Value first, how to next. And then, as you start to build out your marketing, then it's the content. And when I say content, I don't just mean blog content. I mean big C content. I mean owned content and external content. I mean PR. I mean marketing content, not just content marketing. Those are different things, right? And all of those have to align. And incidentally, this makes it look really linear, but you can actually build these and weave together several of these points into a really great narrative. This is the stuff your product marketer helps fuel. So if you're a startup, it might look more like this, which is okay, which is probably what it should look like, right? Really targeted messaging, really specific value. But that's not necessarily cookie cutter. If you're selling to really big enterprise and it's a really complex product, that's when it might change. So start to think about what works well for you. Does everybody recognize this? 2010, which is 7 years ago, which is insane. Does not feel like 2010 should be 7 years ago. I don't know if that made sense. So notice the messaging here. Dropbox. Sync your files online and across computers. It's very tactical. It's very, this is what you're going to do with it, right? Arguably, in 2010, it's for people who kind of stood how the internet worked, right? If my mom saw this in 2010, she'd be like, what? But she uses Dropbox now. So let's skip forward. 2017, reinventing teamwork. That's a way bigger statement, right? So Dropbox, I think, is a really great illustration of a product and the language and the context and the approach and the go-to-market around a product evolves over time. And you can see in the early days, what was most important was being really clear and really concise and pretty targeted around the types of people that you were converting. Now, they're going bigger. Now, it's teamwork. It's about solving a bigger problem, which is collaboration. It's not just syncing files from my iPad to my computer anymore. It's how do I work with the rest of my team that I spend every day with, right? It's different messaging. They've moved along that innovation cycle, right? So I want you guys today to walk away with a couple of core principles. First of all, I want you to think about cross-functional collaboration when it comes to product marketing. Whoever you hire for this role, or if you are doing this role, has to be not only able to work cross-functionally around many teams, but they also have to have the mandate and the authority to do so. Find your rhythm. Think about what process means for you and your company. And keep it simple. Break it when you need to. And above all else, make sure you have the foundation that you need in order to make this work. So nail down your messaging, figure out your buyer personas, and positioning. Above all else, you need to ask yourself the most important question of all when it comes to positioning. Are you fertilizer, or are you a turd? Thanks, guys.